Welcome to the next video in the Writing Techniques series. Today's video is all about how to write an introduction. This introduction lesson will be geared toward informational or expository writing. All right, let's jump in. To start, we need to understand the ingredients of an introduction. So an introduction has three main goals. First, an introduction has a hook. The goal of the hook is to get the reader interested in your topic and to activate their background knowledge. We want them to walk away thinking about what they already know about the topic that you're teaching. Next, we have the thesis. The thesis sometimes is also referred to as the main idea, and the goal of the thesis is to teach the reader the most important idea about your topic. In other words, if they walked away knowing one thing about your topic, what is that one thing you're trying to teach them? And then finally, the subtopics. The goal of the subtopics is to help the reader know what ideas they're going to learn more about in your essay. Now that we know the three components of an introduction, let's look at each piece so that you can include them in your writing. To get started, I want to show you that I have a writing plan. Now, this isn't the only way to plan out your writing, but this is one example. So for this one, you can see that just like you, I have topic sentences, and I have key details for each topic sentence. For the introduction, I don't want to look at the key details. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on the topic sentences, and those are the pieces of information that I need to use when writing my introduction. An introduction starts with the hook, and like I said earlier, the goal of an introduction is to get the reader interested in your topic, in other words, to make them want to read your writing, and to activate their background knowledge, to get them thinking about what they already know. And there are 5 different strategies we're going to be exploring today. That doesn't mean these are the only strategies, but these are 5 go-to strategies that you can use for lots of different types of writing. Let's explore each one in detail. The first strategy is the sensory strategy. In the sensory strategy, we want our reader to imagine our topic, and we're going to describe our topic using the 5 senses. What can they see? What could they taste? What could they smell, feel, or hear? So for my example, I'm writing about polar bears. If you look back at that last slide, you'll see it's all about polar bears. And so I wanted them to imagine that the polar bear had soft white fur, or maybe to be nervous because the polar bear has sharp, jagged claws, or to imagine they can hear the polar bear's ear-splitting roar. All of these things are sensory. They're connected to what you could experience with your 5 senses. Next, we could use the question strategy. The question strategy is there to activate a reader's background knowledge. We want them to be thinking and remembering. So we want to ask meaningful questions. We don't want to just ask space filler questions like, did you know there are polar bears? Everyone knows there are polar bears. Dig a little deeper. So for example, I have you ever seen a polar bear at the zoo? I want them to start thinking about what experiences they might have had with polar bears. Or I want them to think about how polar bears are different from other bears. So I could ask, did you know that polar bears are very different than other types of bears? Remember, the goal of a question hook is to get your reader thinking about what they've already experienced. Next, we have the fact strategy. And just like the question strategy, we don't want to ask or we don't want to tell just any old fact. We want to tell a shocking fact or an interesting fact to get our reader wondering about the topic. For example, I don't want to just tell my reader, polar bears are really big. That's boring. Instead, I want to shock them with the facts. Polar bears can weigh up to 1,600 pounds and stand over 12 feet tall. That still helps my reader know they're big, but it tells it in an interesting and shocking way. Here's another example. There are only about 26,000 polar bears in the entire world. That's less than the population of a small city. I don't want to just say, there aren't very many polar bears. I want to shock them with how few polar bears there are. These facts should come from your sources. Don't make up a fact. Go back into your source and find a shocking fact that you're not already using as a key detail. You don't want to repeat any of your key detail facts. You already are planning to use those in your body paragraphs. Moving on, we have the background strategy. This is a super useful strategy that you'll start to see more and more as you move into middle and high school. In the background strategy, you're going to tell your readers some basic information about your topic so that they will understand your essay. So it's not just random information, it's intentional information you want your reader to know so that they understand what they're about to learn from you. In my polar bear essay, I really want my reader to know that the polar bears live where it's cold and that they spend their life on sea ice. I don't expect most fifth graders to know what sea ice is, so I want to give some background information about it. Here's what that looks like. Polar bears are a type of bear that lives its entire life in the Arctic. They are the largest type of bear and spend most of their lives living on frozen patches of ocean called sea ice. So now my reader knows what sea ice is. They know it's a frozen patch of ocean. This background information might really help a reader understand my essay. And the last strategy is the imagine strategy. This hook strategy is excellent if you excel in narrative writing. If you like to tell an exciting story, this is a great way for you to get your informational writing started in a way that still shows some of your writing talents. The goal of the imagine strategy is to tell your reader a story where they get to experience your topic. And here's my example. Imagine you are out on the snow-covered Arctic tundra. There is nothing but blinding white snow all around you, when suddenly some of that snow starts to move. It was never a pile of snow at all. It was a polar bear. I want my reader to feel like they're there experiencing it. All right, so now that you've heard these 5 strategies, students love to ask, which one is the best one? I want a good grade. Which strategy should I use? Instead of answering that question, take a look at my example and see if you can figure it out. All right, up here at the top, I have my 3 topic sentence ideas just to help me remember what I'm writing about. But for my hook, I'm really going to be creative. So first I wrote, have you ever seen a polar bear in a zoo? Which strategy does that use? Right, that was the question strategy. But wait, I'm not done. Polar bears weigh up to 1,600 pounds and stand over 12 feet tall. Which strategy is that? Right, that's an interesting or shocking fact. But wait, I'm not done. Polar bears are a type of bear that lives its entire life in the Arctic. They are the largest type of bear and spend most of their lives living on frozen patches of ocean called sea ice. Which strategy is that? Right, that one's background. So really, when you look at this, you'll see I don't have one hook strategy because all of this is my hook. I used 3 different strategies. I used the question strategy, the fact strategy, and the background. By combining all 3 of these, I've written a much more compelling hook that helps engage my reader and activates their background knowledge. So those are the strategies that we can use when writing an informational hook. That was the first part of our informational introduction. We always start with the hook, but there are 2 more pieces we need to include. So let's move on to those. Next, we have the thesis. Remember, the thesis has an important job. It teaches the reader the most important idea about your topic. In order to write a thesis, we need to look at each of the topic sentence ideas that you plan to teach and figure out what they all have in common. So let's look at those. First, I have topic sentence number 1. It says, polar bears rely on their adaptations to stay warm in the Arctic. So then I thought about that and I said, what's it really about? Oh, it's really about adaptations for the cold. And then I took a look at my next topic sentence. My next topic sentence says, polar bears have strategies for when food is scarce. I thought, what's that really about? Oh, it's about strategies for lack of food. So they have ways to deal with the cold, ways to deal with lack of food, and let's look at topic sentence number 3. Melting sea ice causes many problems for polar bears. Oh, I get it. It's about how they need sea ice to survive. Okay, so I've got cold adaptations, lack of food because they're in the Arctic, sea ice to survive, and I try to say, what's the big idea? What am I really trying to get my reader to understand? As a hint, as you're thinking this through, try a sentence starter. You can use topic is or topic are. So for example, polar bears are, what do I want to say about what they are like? Or you can use can or could. Polar bears can, and then I have to think, what am I trying to say? And so here's my example. Polar bears are well suited to a life in the cold Arctic. And I know that works because it's connected to the adaptations for the cold, their strategies for lack of food in the Arctic, and the sea ice is in the Arctic. So this idea here connects all 3 of my subtopics, and that's the goal of a thesis. You're trying to make one statement that connects to all your subtopic ideas. And then you can add that to your introduction. So here was my hook, and now here is my thesis. That leaves me with the subtopics. When I'm writing my subtopics part of the intro, I'm going to let my reader know what ideas they're going to learn about in my essay. So basically, I'm just telling them what are the 3 topic sentences that they're going to learn about when they read this. This is an easy strategy. All you do is write your topic sentences that you're going to teach and separate them with commas and an and. Sometimes I have students practice this by writing comma, comma, and in their notes to remember. Let me show you what I mean. First, I have my first topic sentence about polar bears relying on their adaptations. And then I literally just write it. Polar bears use their adaptations to survive in the cold Arctic. And then I end it with a comma. Then I move on to my next topic sentence idea. Polar bears have strategies for when food is scarce. And I record that thinking. And I put a comma. I look at my third topic sentence idea. I write and then I include that information and end the sentence. Now I can add that to my introduction right after I put my thesis statement. And that leaves me with my final introduction paragraph. You can see over here, I start with the hook, then tell the thesis, and end by telling the subtopics. You're welcome to pause the video and read through if you would like an example of what that sounds like. Otherwise, I encourage you to get started on your own introduction. If you feel stuck and not sure what to do, you can go back to any point in this video and rewatch just that section to remind you how to do that part of an introduction.